Yes, team, and welcome to the next round of our mindset coaching sessions, and a session that I think targets three of the key things that are essentially very much all the same, that we all create and that we all struggle with. And first of all, I want you to know that it's very normal to struggle with these three or four subjects that are essentially all the same thing, really, that I'm going to build into today's training. Because if you weren't experiencing them or struggling with each or all of them at some point, I would go so far as to say I would feel that was a little bit abnormal compared to actually not struggling with them. So if you didn't experience any form of anxiety, stress, worry, or overthinking, that are all essentially, we create those emotions. Remember, they're states, not things that we have. We don't take ownership of them. Then I would find that more bizarre. I would tip my hat and salute you. But if you didn't struggle with any of these in some format, then you're an absolute mindset warrior. So very often it's about accepting that we experience overwhelm, overthinking, stress, anxiety, and worry, and learning the correct strategies to cope with them, rather than thinking, how do I stop worrying? Well, how do I worry less and handle worrying? How do I stop experiencing anxiety? How do I handle anxiety? How do I stop feeling overwhelmed? How do I become better at handling overwhelm? How do I stop overthinking? How do I overthink less and get a handle on overthinking? So, I discuss this in all aspects of everything, that we'll never really fix and get rid of these things, just like we can't get rid of negative people. Yet so many people try. There will always be negative people in this world, because without negative people, there can't be positive people. Without negative, there can't be positive. Without happy, there can't be sad. Without love, there can't be hate. Without stress, there can't be calm. So we all experience these spectrums in different levels, and it's how we get a handle on them. But definitely stress, worry, and anxiety, it is something that holds all of us back. So we are all huge warriors. I'm a huge warrior. Everything worries us, but it's how do we go from becoming less of a warrior to more of a warrior, is what we're going to work on today. So as you've heard me discuss before, I never quite know where these figures come from, but we have around about 40,000 thoughts per day. Men do. And women have around about 60,000 thoughts per day. So for all of them to not be thoughts of worry, anxiety, and stress, or all of them to be positive, would be virtually impossible, wouldn't it? So, it's very hard to control our thoughts, but essentially, we do control our thoughts, and learning to control them is the key thing that will take us forward in life. And this comes through practicing journaling, having a solid morning routine, creating habits, but most of all, bringing everything back to the present. Unless it's, let's say, a catastrophe, a crisis, an exam, an awkward conversation that we know has to happen, it's very rare that we're worried about just what's going to happen today, this morning. It's always something far further in the future. And it's very often something that there's no real evidence of, and it's our imagination thinking about other people's imaginations, or creating something that might happen in the future that holds us back from taking action, even though we have no real evidence of this. Mark Twain's famous quote, "I've had a whole lot of worries in my life. Most of them never happened." So as such, we need to understand several things. One is that most worry and overthinking is future worry, future anxiety, and it's an inability to stay present on what it is we need to do today. This is why within your Unbreakable 90 planner, those questions are there every day. What's today's most important job? What are today's next 3 most important jobs? How am I feeling physically today? How am I feeling mentally? And what do I need to do to improve that state right now? It doesn't say, what are the most important jobs for the next 90 days? Because if it did, then it would be a huge list. A huge list then creates stress, overwhelm, anxiety, and worry. So much of it is about controlling our thoughts and bringing them back to the present. This is why the morning journal and the evening wins, either in the planner or in the group, are so important. So how can we crowd anxiety out of our mind? Well, first of all, we need to understand that anxiety is predicting a negative outcome of the future, which is the direct opposite to confidence. Confidence is predicting a positive outcome of the future, and it's also our relationship with failure and how to handle it and move forward, not our relationship with success. Even though we very often perceive successful people to be confident people. Confident and successful people are people who have learned to handle stress, anxiety, worry, and failure, go through it and not give up. So worry, anxiety, and stress are all very much the same thing, okay? And we are the only kind of species, can't speak, that have this capacity to very often imagine the future or be stuck in the past. So we're either shackled with fear of what may happen that we have no evidence of, or we're kept stuck from what has happened and fear that it would happen again. So we very much imagine the future, don't we? What might happen, and then we overthink it, and then we create stress, and then we create overwhelm, and then we create anxiety. And again, drilling a little bit more into the stress one. Stress is the main one when we need to understand that we really do create our own stress. So if we have the habit of leaving things till the last minute, then we created that stress. So we can handle that by planning better. You know, filming one of these videos on a Sunday night when it needs to go live on Monday morning will create stress because there's no room to fail. However, if I did it on a Monday, there is no stress. Rocking up to an interview, not knowing where to park or where the building is, 15 minutes before it's about to start will create a lot of stress. If we arrived 2 hours early, parked and went and got a coffee 5 minutes from where we go in, and we had well rehearsed everything that we needed to say and we really knew our stuff, then again, we wouldn't experience the nerves, the anxiety and the worry because we're there. Again, another great example that I use is, I've used this before on several other trainings. Again, stress is our reaction to a situation and we control that. And also remember, another great book to read is Daniel Gorman's book about emotional intelligence. So our emotional intelligence is the point between where we get triggered and whether or not we react and how we react. So if I was sitting in a cafe and my car was parked outside and all of a sudden a lorry came along and it crashed straight into my car, that is just a situation and a circumstance. However, we might name it a very stressful situation. The only thing that makes it stressful is my reaction to it. So I can run outside, I can start screaming blue murder, I could start arguing with the driver, asking what the hell he thought he was doing, start to spiral into the future, thinking about how am I going to get to work? Who's going to pay for this? What's happened? Get angry, get really, really angry and create all this own stress. Or a trained individual can be like, wow, can't believe that's just happened. let's just make sure that everyone's okay first. Now let's breathe and let's understand what's actually happened. What does it mean? And what's the fastest way I can deal with this situation, which is a negative one, to produce a positive outcome? So again, it's our reaction to the situation that creates the stress, not the situation. So imagination is the act of forming a mental image of something not present to the senses, or something that's never before wholly been perceived in reality. So we're thinking about something that hasn't actually happened, may not happen, creating a vision of it happening, and then stressing, worrying, or overthinking about it. It's not real. Okay? We as humans have developed what's called the theory of the mind, where we can think about what we are thinking about. How crazy is that? Now, as with anything, this can be incredible if it's used right. So we can imagine how we want our future to look. We can imagine positive outcomes. We can create a compelling vision of the future that we want to move forward, that are going to make us feel excited, inspired, driven, motivated, and like we have to have something to move towards. But also have the reality that if it doesn't plan out as I expected, as my 4 marathons in 24 hours didn't, well, I'm already prepared for the worst possible scenario. And going into that run, I knew if I didn't do it, I would simply do it again. I knew that injury was a risk. I knew there was a chance I would fail. So I'd already prepared for the best possible outcome and the worst possible outcome, rather than just imagining the worst possible outcome or just imagining the best possible outcome, which would lead to disappointment if it's not achieved. So another kind of great example I used with this was last year, when I've got a house that I rent and I needed the tenants to move out. Now, I procrastinated on calling the tenant for 8 weeks. 8 weeks of letting my imagination run wild. What if he trashes my house? What if he tries to take me to court? What if he won't move out? What if he starts squatting? What if he refuses to move out? What if he says we're going to court? What if I ruin his life? What if he can't find somewhere else to live? What if he hates me? All what ifs, creating stress, anxiety, overthinking, and overwhelm. In reality, when I actually made the phone call, the tenant said, no problem whatsoever, Lee. You always expect this as a tenant. What date would you like us to move out for? We'll start looking for somewhere new ASAP. And I want to thank you for being an incredible landlord. Now, I could have prevented that 8 weeks of stress, anxiety, overwhelm, and worry by just having the conversation. But because my imagination was creating an outcome which I didn't have any evidence would exist, I procrastinated on it and literally created my own stress, anxiety, and worry for a full 8 weeks. Now, becoming the architect of your own life and becoming the author of how we want our life to look is so powerful if it's used correctly. And it's actually the same process. We're just imagining a different outcome. We can use this to build incredible relationships and thrive off of imagining the future. But it can also be used negatively if we don't get a handle on it. Now, this is when it becomes a little bit sciencey. And I always love the example of a dog to describe how we can try and overcome this a little bit, because dogs are the most present things in the world. They don't have what's called a prefrontal cortex. Now, this is the part of the brain that creates worry, that creates stress, that creates anxiety. And it's a visionary mechanism that can create a positive or a negative outcome. And very often, if we don't manage it, it will always create a negative outcome, which then creates the stress, which then creates the worry. You know, we've said this before, I've always said, with anxiety, action is the only answer. Whatever you need to do, just do it. And you can deal with the outcome when you know it. But if you don't deal with it because you have an inappropriate need for certainty of what the outcome will be, the stress and anxiety will just increase and increase and increase. And we can also use the version of actually imagining the worst possible outcome and realizing, well, what does that actually mean? And it's very often not that much happens. You know, if we were creating stress and anxiety about maybe leaving a job to change careers, or maybe leaving a job to go self-employed. Now, we can think of all the worst possible scenarios, but the reality is, you know, if you left a job to go self-employed and it didn't work out, the most likely thing that would happen would be you just get another job. You know, it wouldn't be fatal, it wouldn't be terminal, it wouldn't be life-ending, yet we imagine it to be, and that's what stops us taking action. And we cannot think our way out of these situations under any circumstances whatsoever. And what happens with dogs is, this is why you can shout at your dog, you can call it every name under the sun, you know, you could give it a kick up the backside because it's knocked a drink over, which was your fault, and spoiled your cream carpet, and it's crapped in the kitchen again, and you could scream. And the second you leave the door and come back 10 minutes later, that dog just jumps up and licks you and loves you and wants to cuddle you like you never ever got angry at it. And that's because it doesn't have that thought process that it holds on to. It only lives in the present, what's happening now. And this is how we overcome stress, anxiety, and worry. What do I need to do now? Not what might happen in 6 weeks, not what might happen in 4 weeks, not what happened at the end of the year. What do I need to do today? Now, our mind is like a pit bull. Nothing is stronger. And if you learn to manage it and love it and look after it and exercise it and train it, it will look after you, just like a pit bull. But if you mistreat it and you don't train it and you don't look after it and you don't work on it daily, it will misbehave and it will attack and it could harm and it could even kill you. It's a great analogy for how the mind works. And it's the same as building muscles. If we want to build a strong body and strong muscles, strong arms, strong glutes, big booty, big pecs, then we need to train it every day and then rest it when it needs training. We need to feed it with the right nutrients. We need to protect it. And most of all, we need to work on it every single day. And our mind is exactly the same. But if we're not doing any work on training our mind, then it will just drift. Negativity, anxiety, stress, worry, like a golf ball rolling down a hill that becomes a huge mountain. And again, the same will happen with positivity. We can snowball either way. It just depends which thoughts we are thinking more of. So worry and anxiety is generally something that most people experience, and you won't get rid of it. So as I said, the key that I want you to remember is stop trying to suppress these feelings, because that's what very often will lead to not communicating and not taking action until they get worse and worse and worse, and then they explode. We've all done this, right? You could have just had a conversation with someone 3 weeks ago, but instead you didn't have the conversation. You let it get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And then you lost your shit with them into the middle of next week, all because you didn't deal with the thoughts initially. Thoughts can be like the tiniest seed and we can deal with it, or we can leave them for 3 months until they've become a fucking oak tree that's almost impossible to uproot and deal with. So we all worry about different things. And very often, rather than worrying about focusing on creating our dream life, our dream job, our dream body, finding our dream partner, we worry about the other things. So we worry that we're not good enough. We worry that we'll never meet the right person. We worry that we'll die on our own. We worry that we don't have enough money. We worry that we're not clever enough or tall enough. That's just me. And sometimes We just need to understand what the worry is and then look at what evidence there actually is to support it. So think about now what your biggest worry is, because worry will equal anxiety. Worry will create anxiety. Worry will create fear, and worry will create negative thoughts. It's all as one. But the mind is like a naughty dog. As I said, if we don't keep training it, don't expect to be okay. These problems aren't going to solve themselves. We have to work on them. Just like if we want to lose body fat, we're going to have to get to the gym and be in a calorie deficit. If we want to build muscle, we're going to have to lift weights and be in a calorie surplus. It's not just going to happen. And the mind just isn't going to get better on its own. So very often, and again, you guys might experience this, sometimes we're very often focused on a task that we're working towards. And then we start worrying about something else. And all of a sudden, we'll have drifted off. Some of you will be doing this right now. You'll be thinking, I need to listen to this training and I'm paying attention. I do this all the time. And then all of a sudden, a thought comes in. Shit, I still need to deal with that thing with Sharon at work. It's going to be a nightmare. And all of a sudden, all the focus has gone from your dreams, your goals, what you're moving towards, your mission, and it's just drifted onto the thing that you worry about. Remember, what we focus on grows. Where attention goes, energy flows and results show. Whatever we focus on, we get more of. We can either water the flowers and we can grow this amazing, beautiful flower bed, or we can keep watering the weeds. The weeds and the flowers are the thoughts, the positive and the negative ones. Whichever one we water, we'll get more of. Again, you guys, surely you will experience this. I do. I can be out on a run and I'm listening to David Goggins' audiobook, and all of a sudden I realize that I haven't listened to a word he said for the last 30 minutes because I've been worrying about work. Am I going to get enough clients this month? Am I going to do this? Is this working out? Is that going to be okay? How am I going to do this? This person's pissed me off. That's not quite working out. Don't really know what I'm going to do next month. Not sure what, and their mind takes over, right? Like I said, like a naughty dog. So what we need to do, and this is why the morning routine is so important to me, is because if we don't get it nailed early on, we will start the day lost in our thoughts. So if you don't do a morning work, if you don't do any personal development, if you don't do the planner, if you don't remind yourself of who you are and what you want, if you don't write down today's most important job, if you don't know when you're going to the gym, if you don't write down the next 3 most important jobs, and you don't have a plan today to move towards this compelling vision of your future that you've created, where do you think the mind will go? Worry, stress, anxiety. Lost in your thoughts. How often are you driving home and all you're thinking about is something that's happened that day and you can't get it out of your head? Sometimes it's even a text message or an email when, this is why text messages and emails could be so dangerous, because there's no tonality in it. So you think, why is she being like that with me? What have I done to upset her? God, he's fucking proper got arse on with me. Can't believe he sent that message. In fact, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to send it to my friends. What do you think he means on this message? Do you think he's being all right? Or do you think I've upset him? When we could have just asked the person ourselves. Oh, we wonder whether people like us or not, right? Because that's one of our other biggest fear, built from years below. Tribe mentality. We want to fit in and feel part of the tribe. Because if you go back in the old days, if you didn't fit in and you weren't part of the tribe, then you starved and you died and you were excluded and you were left out in the cold. So again, it's one of our most human needs. But again, used positively, we can use all of this to tremendously enhance our lives and our mindsets. Okay, so we all yearn to be accepted, to feel like we're enough, to feel like we're significant, to feel loved. It's one of the biggest human need. And we want this to be from a positive driven peer group, which you've got here. And that's why this community and this peer group is so important and so prosperous, because this is what happens with peer groups, okay? We either upscale our behavior and continue to improve and stretch and be accountable and do the work to stay part of and modify our behavior to stay part of the peer group that holds us to a higher standard, the coach that holds us to a higher standard, and to fit in, so it's a positive thing, or the same happens with the Debbie Downers, the drinkers, the drug takers, the gamblers, the moaners, the justifiers, the blamers, the complainers. We can lower our standards to go back to our old peer group where worry, anxiety doesn't matter because everyone's worried and they're just all in the same thing. So what happens if we're not positively challenging our thoughts every day? What happens if we're not challenging our thoughts at all? We worry. So the question is, how do I harness this worry, this stress, and this anxiety to produce a positive outcome? Because I always want there to be a practical edge to these trainings, that you can take something away and implement it, okay? So I've spent my whole life worrying, battling anxiety and negative thoughts, feeling I'm not good enough, wondering why people didn't love me, wondering why I wasn't accepted, telling my story over and over again, talking about my mum, talking about my dad, talking about what happened when I was younger. Looking back, trying to understand the past, which isn't serving me because I'm not going that way. So we want to change this. So how do we use it to move forward? How do we channel stress, anxiety, and worry so we can move forward? And if you feel like that still, I get it. I lived there for many years and I still go back there sometimes. It's okay to go back there. Just don't live there. Okay. Now, I now have the ability to make myself exceptionally vulnerable and be honest, because I don't worry about what you guys think. I never would have shared some of the things that I would share now, but I've got to the level where my past doesn't define me. My future does. So I don't worry. But there's so many times when I've hit breaking point, whether it was prepping for a bodybuilding show, whether it's what's happened in the last 12 months, and just worried about everything, worried to the level where I've not been able to do these videos, worried to the level where I was crippled from even doing a sales call, couldn't even go to the gym, didn't even want to leave the house. And almost every time it's happened, it's been because of fear. Fear and my imagination. Now, the best acronym I've ever heard for fear is false evidence appearing real. FEAR. There's times in the last 6 months when I've broken down and cried like a fucking baby. This big, strong guy, right? These big muscles. And I couldn't breathe. I've been shaking. It's happened in the last 6 months, this guys. Shaking uncontrollably. Because all I could think about was that everything was going to go wrong. But this was all an illusion in my head. I'm going to lose my business. All my clients are going to leave. I'm going to die on my own. I'm a terrible dad. I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to go back to drink and drugs. I'm going to forget who I am. I'm going to jump on one of these lives and not be able to talk. Someone's going to post something about my past and all my clients are going to leave and not like me. I'm going to go bankrupt. I'm going to get fat again. Pure worry. But I'm here doing this, right? And you guys will see now. You guys still know I still struggle. I never hide it. I never would. Makes you disingenuous, makes you unauthentic. I'll always discuss my struggles, but I'll always discuss my wins as well. And I'll shout my wins louder than my struggles. So, strategies of how we can start to deal with this, to take away these normal feelings that we will always experience. So, one is positive affirmations. I already have the body, the mind, the business, and the life that I want. I trust that I will continue to grow and get more as long as I contribute. I know that there will be future failings and obstacles, and I'm grateful in advance for all challenges that I face in the rest of 2023, because I know every challenge, every worry, every stress, every anxiety, every difficult situation, every adversity that I face will make me stronger. There will always be obstacles. And if I'm not facing challenge, I'm not playing big enough. If I'm not if I'm not facing challenge, then I'm looking for comfort. And if I look for comfort, I'll find discomfort by default. We cannot get to a place and stay there, guys. Maintenance doesn't exist. I don't care what anyone says. This is why I don't agree that comfort zones exist. You're either going forwards or you're going backwards. You're focusing on what you do want, or you're focusing on what's happened. You're focusing on what's happened, or you're focusing on what needs doing. You're focused on where you were, or you're focusing on where you want to go. And I accept all these lessons now. In fact, I'm grateful in advance. I look forward to challenges. I'm looking forward to the next 24-hour run because I know there'll be lessons. What lessons did I learn in the first one? Loads. Don't start at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Get your nutrition nailed better. Don't allow the press to get in the way of the run. Have less people there. Don't get distracted. Control your pacing strategy. Have a pacing runner with you. Make sure your mobility is more on point. Protect your Achilles. Have strapping. Don't do it on the 29th of December in gale force winds. Always lessons. And now I'm stronger as a result of it because I'm a born survivor, not a victim. And so is each and every one of you. Because you wouldn't be here if not. You've already survived your toughest days. Most of the females in here have birthed and raised children. Use that to put it into perspective next time you're worrying about something. All you need to do is create the dream, create the goal, create the vision, and keep focusing on working on it each day until reality catches up. But if you don't have a vision, if you don't have a future, if you haven't created a plan and a picture of the life that you want, then it's no wonder you're stressed and worried and anxious because you're living in the unknown. Which brings me back to completing the planner every day. Because that is the single thing, along with your morning routine, reminder of your why, reminder of today's most important task, reminder of the jobs you need to do, a reminder of your goal, a reminder of the life and how you want it to look, and the emotional attachment towards wanting it to look that way, all in a morning routine, is what brings you back to the present, rather than being stuck, shackled by memories of the past, or fear over worries of the future. We handle worry, anxiety, and stress by focusing on what we need to do today. My biggest focus right now is impacting as many people as possible. All I want to do is give. And if I'm giving and understanding that life is a contribution-based experience, it's a growth-based experience, and all I focus on is helping and impacting others, I won't have to worry about money, success. I won't worry about anything because I'm just that focused on helping people. That's how I've remodeled the business. No more big enrollments, no more monthly financial targets. Nothing that creates stress, worry, or anxiety. Nothing that makes me feel inferior, not bars too big to hit that I then start to worry and get stressed out when I'm not moving towards them. Just what do I need to do today? And that's what I urge you to do. Every day, all I want to do is impact people, give value, give. If you want to get more out of life, you need to give more. Like I said, it's a contribution-based experience. And if I'm focusing on the fact that I want my son to think I'm his hero, that I want to be an example, not a warning, that I want to show him, not tell him. And all I need to do each day is make sure that my behavior aligns with the goals and the outcomes that I write down each morning. Then I don't need to worry about anything past today. And essentially, I've said this before, yesterday's gone, tomorrow's not promised. 3 good friends I've lost in the last 12 months that aren't here. Again, but we all slip out of it. We all slip back into that stress, worry, anxiety. I was like it only a few weeks ago. And Jamie Roy, who we lost last year, September, DJ friend who died far too young. Again, it snapped me out of it because his song came on the radio. And I remembered all the magic memories we had together. I remembered 4 seasons in snowbombing, 4 seasons in Ibiza together. And it snapped me out of it because I thought, do you know what? Watch the podcast with me and Marcus if you haven't already, Marcus Smith. Tomorrow's not promised. So why am I worrying about fucking the end of this year? Why am I worrying about July? Why am I worrying about my gig at Ministry of Sound? Why am I worrying about anything? Why don't I just worry about today? What do I need to do today? What do I need to do today to make sure that my actions align with the outcomes, the values, and the commitments that I've agreed are the standards that I set for my life? And if I just focus on that day by day and being present, everything else will fall into place. I used to worry about everything. Worry about money. Worry about being alone. Worry about the future. Worry that I'm not good enough. And now all I'm going to worry about is being happy and present today and making sure that I'm having an impact and helping people, because tomorrow's not promised. So why do I need to worry about it? You know, and we can drop the do and have mentality. So if I do well in business, I can have that car. If I make this amount of money, I can have that holiday. If I can run this amount of marathons, I'll get this amount of praise. All these things that are either material or looking for external validation to make me feel good. When rather than thinking, what do I want to get? What do I want to have? I'm focusing on who I want to be. And again, I'm not too concerned whether or not I run 101 miles on the 29th of July or 28th. I very much hope to. I hope to run further. But I'm not worried about whether I succeed or fail or not. Why? Because I'm going to fall in love with the person that I've become on the journey towards doing it. The person I become on the process of moving towards the goal. I'm focused on the journey, not the destination. I'm focused on the process, not the prize. So if you want to have a better body and you want to become a better person who makes better choices and lives a happier life, then we need to create habits that support that vision. And if we're not reminding ourselves of that vision every day, how can we create the habits that support it? We can't. We'll go backwards. So focus on becoming the person you need to be to live the life you want, not getting the life that you want. So be grateful in advance and focus on eating better, sleeping better, training more, and being healthy so you can see your kids grow up and you can be a role model, not on what the scales say. Or how are you going to look in your bikini? Make it internal, not external, and you'll worry far less. Another strategy is take control of your thinking time. Some people sit for hours just thinking negatively. I used to do this for hours and hours and hours and hours until I was virtually suicidal, creating my own depression through my thought process. So now I don't allow myself any free thinking time. I haven't got a television in this house because I will always be on an audiobook, coaching, reading, working, journaling, and focusing on my mind, on what it is that I want, who I want to be, and moving forwards. Because if I spend too much time with my mind, it's like a naughty dog, isn't it? If it's not being trained, if it's not focused on what I do want, it's going to be focused on what I don't want. If it's not focused on what I need to do, it's going to be focusing on what's happened and why. Transformation, physical and mental, is not a spectator sport. You've got to do the work, and we have to make sure that the work is supporting the end goal. The work is planned and scheduled every day and keeps us focused. You guys know I've written it in here. It's in the opening thing. What doesn't get scheduled doesn't get done. So when I write my schedule every morning, does it align with what I say I want? Have I even done it? And then look at my books. I consume information that helps me. When I'm learning, I'm not worrying. When I'm training, I'm not worrying. When I'm working, I'm not worrying. When I'm coaching, I'm not worrying. One of the best ways to cope with anxiety, stress, and worry is to get busy. If you're sat on the couch for 3 to 4 hours per night, drifting in and out of watching TV, you're scrolling on your phone, of course you're going to get worried. Of course you're going to get triggered. Look at the press. It's pure fear mongering. So I consume information that will help me. This stops me worrying. I strengthen my mindset every day with personal development. I create a plan. I have a plan. I understand that every day is a blank page. The pen is in my hand. The pen is mightier than the sword, and I am the fucking author of my own life. And that's what I'm focused on working towards. I don't want to get more sales. I want to give more value. I don't want to get famous. I want to help more people. What I focus on, I become. What I plan, I become. What I schedule, I do. And this knowledge will then impact and help others. And when I'm focused on helping others, help people get what they want, and you will get what you want. Focus on who you want to be and the actions that you need to take to be that person. Make a list. List everything that you want. Get deep on this. Again, I know a lot of you struggle with your whys. I know a lot of you struggle with goal setting. I know a lot of you struggle with creating a vision of your future because you can't see one. And I'm the same. I've been there for 3-4 weeks now. I could not see a vision of my future, and it was crippling me. It took hours of journaling to recreate it. I've had a lot of emotional changes in the last 12 months. But now I've taken the time out and created that vision. And now I have something to move towards, and I feel excited and I feel energized again. And I feel motivated and I feel driven. And I know the person I need to become to live the life I want to lead. But if I haven't got that vision, then I drift off, and then you start consuming information that doesn't support the goals that you want. It doesn't support the life that you want. You're watching Netflix, you're scrolling on social media, you're thinking that everybody's doing better than you. You're basically doing more consuming than you are creating. I've removed almost all of the people I follow on Instagram because I'm not interested in consuming other people's information. That's not impacting me. Watching other people's information isn't impacting lives. Me creating my own information and sharing it is impacting lives. And when you are focused on what you are doing right now, the reasons why you're doing it, and you are doing it daily and setting reminders and writing lists, is almost impossible to worry. Ancient Buddha, what you think about, you become. Not quite. Not quite, because then we're slipping back into the law of attraction and manifesting this. You know, if I think I want to be a badass mindset coach who prevents depression, saves lives, prevents suicides, impacts as many people positively as I can before I leave this earth, which could be tomorrow. If I'm focused on that, it's almost impossible for me to worry. But I can't just focus on the person I want to become and become that person. I have to do the fucking work, and I have to do the work daily. Now, many of you will say, and this is me as well, I get what you're saying, Lee. This all makes really great sense, but I still just can't stop worrying. Not easy, guys. You're not going to win every day. You're not going to get it perfect. But we have to understand it's all relative. Breaking point moments, whether it's the death of a loved one or a nasty comment from a colleague at work, it's all relative. Of course, you are going to still worry about the future. Of course, you're going to worry about what people think about you. But again, you can use that positively. What about if you worry so much about what people think about you that you live your life to such a high standard that the only thing they can think is positive? You leave no room for them to think anything less than positive. So the reason why it's difficult is because these strategies are great, but sometimes the subconscious mind is so strong, it just takes over. Remember, our subconscious mind is 95%. Okay. And when something is continuously on your mind and it's dragging you down and you can't stop thinking about it, it's literally draining every grain of energy out of your body. It's 95% of your thoughts. This is the thing that you're not going to like. Fucking deal with it today. Figure out what it is and deal with it, irrelevant of the outcome, who it's going to upset. The positive, negative outcomes. You have to deal with it. Because if you don't, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. It's not going to get better. If you hate your job, it's not just suddenly going to get better. If you're in a lifeless relationship and you haven't had sex with your partner or got undressed in the dark for 3 years, it's not just suddenly going to get better. If you have a toxic relationship with your kids, your parents, your work colleagues, it's not just suddenly going to get better. If you're that fat you can't walk up the stairs without your legs chafing, it's not just going to get better. If you're boozing every weekend and you can't control it, it's not just suddenly going to get better. If your mental health is on the fucking floor, it's not just going to get better. You have to take action and you have to deal with it today. And when you deal with it, the worry will stop. The anxiety will stop. The stress will stop. You know, who's been in that situation where fucking hell, you finally deal with something and you're like, that's like a metric fuck ton. Now the F-bombs are coming out of stress, worry, anxiety has just been lifted off my shoulder. And I could have dealt with that same thing 6 months ago, but I didn't because of fear. So just deal with it. And if it's something you can't deal with, or you're not sure whether it's the right time to deal with it just yet, then just get busy. All my worries dissipate when I'm busy. I'm not worried when I'm on the decks with Logan. I'm not worried when I'm running around a field with him. I won't be worried when I'm at Ministry of Sound. I'm not worried now when I'm doing this coaching video because I'm focusing on helping you. But, you know, there will still be those times when that thing just keeps coming up. And if it does, the reason why it's not coming up is because you still haven't dealt with it. And this is the difficult part. Because you'll start to suppress it. You'll start to cover it up. You'll start to avoid it. You'll start to do the things when we put the plasters over the crack. Oh, I'll buy the car to make me feel happy. I'll buy the house to make me feel happy. I'll do some other mad challenge to make me feel significant. Because I'm still not dealing with the thing that I need to deal with. And we'll start to say things like, oh, it's not actually that important to me. I'm happy as I am. I'm just going to stick it out. It's all right. it's all right, I'll be fine. And then we slip into the victim mentality. Oh, nobody understands. Nobody loves me. Nobody really cares. Nobody respects me. Nobody values me at work. I just can't deal with this. And then we'll slip into that victim mentality. And we have to deal with it. And the reality is, guys, don't think that any worry is too small. Because like I said, a worry will start like a seedling. Deal with it, easy, small, done, dusted, difficult conversation. Let it go on for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks. Bang, it's a fucking oak tree that's going to have to rip up to get it out of the ground. Because the seed's been planted. The seed of worry was planted. You left it alone. Then it got watered every day, you thinking about it. Then it grew. Then all of a sudden, it's a massive tree. And think about how difficult it is to rip the tree up and deal with it versus how difficult is it to rip the little seedling up. One's easy, one's hard. If you've got a worry, if you've got a stress, deal with it and save yourself the pain. Now, a couple more strategies. Again, ask yourself that question. If I deal with this now, is it going to be easier or is it going to be easier in 3 months? Am I going to cause myself less pain by dealing with it now or less pain if I wait 3 months? You know, don't say it's nothing. Don't say, don't worry about it. Don't say, just forget it. Don't say, I'm fine when you're not. Deal with it. What's causing the stress, the anxiety, and the worry, deal with it and save yourself the pain. Final strategy, which again is something that I've worked on a lot. And judging by my past, the amount of scraps that I've been in, a lot of you probably won't believe this, but I have now dealt with it. I used to have a chip on my shoulder. I used to think, fight fire with fire. Never back down. Vulnerability is weakness. Is it fuck? Vulnerability is strength. Admitting you need help is the strongest thing you will ever do. Asking for help is even stronger. But conflict avoidance is very often the biggest barrier to happiness. But there's different situations with this. We need to stop avoiding conflict. This doesn't mean that we get into a fight with everyone. This doesn't mean that we don't stand up for ourselves. It's different because it's been my biggest factor in dealing with worry. And we're talking about situations here. So conflict is very often, we're thinking fight, right? Right, I need to have a fight. It's not about fighting. It's not about aggression. It's not about winning or losing. It's about communication. So my biggest factor in holding me back was I would refuse to deal with situations. I would avoid them. I would avoid difficult conversations. And then I would build a fake reality in my head that was okay. But if you want to live a world-class life, you're going to have to go through some discomfort, some difficult conversations, some difficult gym sessions, some difficult decisions. We can't keep avoiding that conflict. You guys know this. It's the same with fat loss. You either go through the discomfort of stopping drinking, getting rid of your negative peer group, going to the gym, going through a little bit of pain, or you get the discomfort of being 20 stone and being a depressed alcoholic who, as I said, can't walk up the stairs without their legs chafing together. Both options are uncomfortable, aren't they? Both options are hard. You can choose your hard. You can go through discomfort, not avoid the situations, and come out the other side a winner. You can go through the discomfort of any situation. On the other side of that discomfort is reward. or we can avoid going through the discomfort and we will end up uncomfortable via default. But we have to get strong with this. And again, it comes down to our values and our visions and the standards that we hold ourselves to. Because very often we'll do it. Not avoiding, like I said, I'm not talking about getting into fights. I'm talking about conversations. Look at the situation with the tenant. Oh, I don't want to kick Mark out. It's going to hurt his feelings. What if he can't live anywhere? So what's the downside? I'm going to lose my house or go bankrupt or not have anywhere to live just so that I don't upset him. That's the reality of what some people do. They'll stay in a relationship for 10 years because they don't want to hurt the other person or they don't want to hurt their kids. They'll stay in a job creating some bullshit about that the company wouldn't continue without them, that they don't want to let the boss down and stay unhappy their whole lives to not cause conflict. Too much of a coward to take ownership of a situation. Do you know how many relationships, family, personal, sexual, whatever relationships there are, have been completely ruined because one person was unwilling to take ownership of a situation, unwilling to say, do you know what, I was wrong, I'm sorry. And that will cripple your life. The longer you continue to avoid conflict, the longer you'll stay stuck. Tough words are like tough workouts. And very often, if we're experiencing stress, anxiety, or worry, it's because we need to have some tough conversations, either with ourselves or with others. And the reason they're like tough workouts is because they're sickening at the time. They're difficult, they're awkward, they're uncomfortable, they're painful. But then you come out the other end and you're like, oh, yes, I feel amazing. I've done it. I've dealt with that. I feel stronger. I'm more resilient. I can move forward. But all growth comes from leaning into fear, leaning into the pain of the session. Again, I spoke about this. The first time I stepped on stage and spoke at an event, I was shaking like a shitting dog. Stress, anxiety, fear, worry, everything all in one bundle. What are they going to think of me? I'm supposed to be their peers. What if they all think I'm talking shit? What if nobody likes me? I was sweating, I was shaking. And I opened my speech by saying, I'm shitting myself right now. And they all looked back at me very strangely. And I said, but you know what? The thing is, when I'm experiencing this feeling of fear, when I've got butterflies, when I'm sweating, when I'm shaking, when I'm so uncomfortable that every single bone in my body wants to turn and run that way, and I carry on and go through it, that is where the magic happens. That's where we get stronger. That's where the growth is. That's where we build mental resilience. That's where we add legs on the confidence table. That's how we build a stronger mind, by going through it. The reason why we experience stress, anxiety, and worry is because of fear of the outcome, because we have an inappropriate need for certainty. If only I knew the girl would say yes, of course I would ask her out, but I'm never going to ask her out because I'm afraid she'll say no and I'll look like a dick. Again, I'd love to talk on stage. It could completely change my career, but I'm too afraid in case people laugh at me. We have to go through this fear. Again, now I can DJ without even thinking about it. First time I DJ'd again, I was shaking like a shitting dog. Stressed, anxious, worried, crippled by fear. So two things we need to understand. One, it's normal to experience it. Two, we need to deal with it now. Action is the only answer. And three, it's a positive thing. Because if you're feeling stressed, anxious, and worried, it means you're about to go into a position of discomfort where you overcome fear. When you go through discomfort, you will be rewarded. The fear will dissipate and you'll come out of the other end stronger. It's the same as training. What happens if a workout's comfortable? Fuck all. This is why you see the melons that go to the gym at 6 o'clock every morning, walking on the treadmill, going around the machines, 3 sets of 12, next machine, little scroll, 3 sets of 12, walk out, not sweating, heart rate's not gone up, but they in their head, they've gone to the gym. Didn't even get remotely uncomfortable. So what happened? Nothing changes. It's the same with conversations. If everything's comfortable, you are never going to grow. And in order to go through discomfort, we're going to have to go through anxiety, stress, overwhelm, worry, and fear. So they are good things that we can use to channel us forward. So if you're experiencing all of them, good. As long as you take the action, it means you are about to do something that will make you grow. Van Gogh said, didn't he? The comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there. So the same as when you exercise your body at a difficult level and you work hard consistently over time and you take action, because action is the only answer, you will build muscle and drop body fat. When you deal with worry and overcome fear and push through overthinking, stress, and anxiety, your mind responds by making you stronger, making you happier. And the next time you have to deal with that situation, it's slightly easier, just like the next workout is slightly easier. So I'm going to leave you with this. Whatever you are worried about right now, whatever's keeping you awake, whatever's making you anxious, whatever's stressing you out, good. Why? Because it's a fucking reminder that you're alive. It's a reminder that you have goals, you have a purpose, and all you need to do is deal with it now. Grab the most uncomfortable thing you can in your life and deal with it and go through it. Because that is what you need to do. Worry, stress, anxiety. Action is the only answer. And the only way you can become free and free your mind of those things is be willing to put yourself in uncomfortable situations, not avoid conflict, go through it and run out the other side, having overcome fear and procrastination to start living the life that you truly deserve. Guys, I love you all.